Hey, what's up YouTube? This is EP Variety and welcome back to another One Take Wonder, aka the series where I review things and talk about stuff but don't want to edit them because I am lazy. But I do want to talk about Yaira. Now, Yaira is the latest Rippaverse comic that has finally dropped. I got it. I tried to get it as soon as I possibly could so I could get it faster than most. And I probably still didn't get it first. But basically, Yaira has been a pretty highly anticipated. Hello, Butterbean. Has been a pretty highly anticipated comic to come out ever since the ISOM #1 dropped. Back in the day when the Rippaverse began with ISOM #1, there was a lot of characters teased. You've got, of course, ISOM, you got the Alpha Core, and you've also got Yaira and a few other characters here and there. And while I think ISOM could have benefited from a story only focusing on ISOM and maybe teasing something at the end, I do think that launching multiple characters off of one comic was the correct business move. Storytelling, it wasn't my personal favorite, but the idea is certainly there, right? And it definitely worked. So ISOM 2 rolls around, not really much about Yaira, but Alpha Core is involved. And kind of randomly thrown in there. They don't really have anything to do with ISOM #2, and I talked about that in my review by ISOM 2, how it felt like the story was not as focused as it could have been. And my complaints about that were completely quashed whenever Alpha Core came out, because Alpha Core is easily the best comic in the Rippaverse series so far, and that is 4 at this point. It used to be 3, now we've got Yaira out here. Written by the Saska twins and drawn by Deborah Carita. I'm probably not saying the name right because there's some markings above the E and A. But after so long, what are my thoughts on Yaira? And my answer to that is, it's not that good. Now, hold your horses, hold the pitchforks, and everything. You gotta give me a second here, okay? You gotta let me explain why I think it's not that good. So first of all, everything I said about ISOM 2, about how it wasn't super focused, it was kind of all over the place, and it sort of it completely abandoned the plot with with Darren from the first comic, from the first volume of it. The second one completely, almost, it didn't completely abandon him, but it definitely put him to the side in favor of like this fiery, hellish demon race that ISOM has to go and fight with Bloodruth. And Bloodruth is a really cool character, and she's getting her own comic, also written by the Saska twins. And the thing with that, how I was saying it was very unfocused, that kind of goes for Yaira as well. Now, here's the thing. It does have a little more focus than ISOM 2. In my opinion, I think everything included in here is meant to tie together to the story. It is all relevant to the main story that's being told from page 1 to page, I don't even know how many pages it is. It's not numbered. But, it's kind of close to it's got to be around 100, right? It felt very long reading it, and I'll explain why in a second. But besides that, it is, while I think it's a little unfocused and out there, everything does have to do with the comic. With the actual, you're getting a full, complete story whenever you read from start to finish. What I think the problem with this comic is, it's doing too much. It's doing too much in one thing, and it feels twice as long as it should be because the dialogue is extremely repetitive. How many times did Yatoni and the other, I can't remember the girl's, the woman's name. It starts with YA, because I guess everyone of her goddess race has, starts with YA. Yanessa, Yatoni and Yanessa. The thing is, how many times, and if you've read the comic, you can attest to this. You can go back and you can prove what I'm saying here yourself. How many times did they say This is the end of the line. This is where you die. This is the end of you. I'm going to kill you. You're not coming back to your homeworld because you're dying here. How many times did they say this over and over again between like three different fight scenes? And it's just repetitive. I hate to say this because some people will hear this and be like, "Oh, well, your review doesn't count." Towards the end, I started skipping dialogue boxes of the antagonist here, and because it was just too repetitive. There was too many words with too little meaning. I could have been through with this comic in half the time. I'm not even kidding. I'm not exaggerating. I could have been through this comic in half the time if they didn't have the antagonist constantly talking about how Yaira has, like, abandoned them and their kind, and she's a terrible person for doing it, and she's going to die, and this is the end of the line. And I say end of the line specifically because that line is said by Yatoni twice in the same scene. Like, there's just no point in having him say it twice. It makes me wonder, and this was something that it was kind of theorized, was that the series had gone through some rewrites, some apparently the weather app is trying to say something. No, thank you. It's trying to, the series is going through like some rewrites or some art touch-ups and stuff like that. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But I think they could have done more. I think there should have been a little more time in the oven for this. But the problem is that the Rippaverse promised Yaira winter. And that's what they've been saying because, her powers are ice themed. Of course, her comic has to drop in the winter. And that's what they've been saying for months and months. And rather than take more time and have to go back on a promise and say, hey, I'm sorry, guys, we're going to have to delay Yaira until the spring. They took as much time as possible to still technically be in winter, in March, to start the campaign for Yaira #1. And I genuinely think that they chose to do this because, now this is not confirmed, this is just my thoughts. I think they chose to prioritize keeping their promises rather than making this comic as good as it could have been. Because there are some great things here. The antagonist, the Magus, is a fantastic and terrifying antagonist. He's like this bug creature that casts magic. You don't usually see monstrous creatures using magic. Typically, it's like, more humanoid type of characters. And I especially like the aesthetic of whenever he closes up his wings. He almost looks like a humanoid person with, like, a really big hood type of thing. And I like the idea of the design. I like the idea of the character. But the writers, the Saskas, I think they should have made him the only antagonist. I think by having just this one dark magic creature going after her, and he says the same things as Yanessa and Yatoni as well. He says he has, like, basically the same dialogue lines, but with a little more sinister feeling to it. He's a bit more, animalistic, talking about he craves the fearful flesh of his victims and stuff like that, and that's all cool. That's totally fine. It's a comic book. I don't expect it to be like, poetry. I don't expect it to be the most complex dialogue ever. That I'm totally fine with an evil guy just being evil for the sake of, I like the taste of flesh. That's totally cool, and I think it fits. I think it's totally fine. I don't have a problem with that. But I have a problem whenever you have three villains saying the same thing, just in different fonts. It's like and I'm not even joking either. I guess I am joking, but I didn't mean to joke. They do speak in different fonts to tell the languages. Nice touch. I like that. I think that's a good little quality of life thing for reading. This way you're not just, like, putting stuff in Japanese or some kind of Celtic language or whatever. There's a lot of different languages in this one. There's three that I could tell that were separate fonts. Maybe there's a fifth one. I wasn't sure. But the villains, just repetitive. Just to summarize that, the villains are repetitive, and I'm not going to be repetitive by saying it a third time. So the next point that I want to say that's just a little, maybe it's just a nitpick, maybe it's just me being stupid, but why is this woman 7 foot tall and no one's asking any questions? I get it. It's possible for a woman to be 7 foot tall under like certain extreme circumstances. No issue with that necessarily. But the fact is that she's a blonde woman, she's 7 foot tall, and she's in Texas. Wouldn't people recognize the fact that this is Yaira? Okay, I understand Clark Kent, he puts on the glasses. Hey, I'm Clark Kent. I was asking some questions about the Daily Planet. Lois? I know. It's like the same thing, right? And comic book logic, okay. But that was back in like the 40s. I don't know when Superman was made exactly. It was a long time ago. But not the 40s, probably the 60s. Anyway, the main point I'm getting at is that we've moved beyond that now. Like we have changed as a human being to want more in our entertainment. And Clark Kent can get away with being Superman with glasses and no one recognizes him. That's fine because that's established. What isn't, what is new and needs to be established and needs to be better, I think, is Yaira. I think it's just a little bit ridiculous for this giant woman to be walking around town and not be suspected to be Yaira. And they could even, maybe get away with the fact that her hair is blue when she's using her powers. Maybe they could say, okay, well, she might be 7 foot tall, blonde, and white, but she doesn't have blue tips at the end of her hair. So this can't be the woman. But the problem is that her hair isn't always blue whenever she's fighting. Sometimes it's not. It seems to be only when she uses her ice powers, which is fine. That's a character quirk. But again, that adds to my breaking of suspension of disbelief that people would not recognize that this is freaking Yaira. So there's that issue. Another issue I have is just how much information is being given. We've got the origin of this new character, this new girl who's midway through a robbery, and all of a sudden she's got Yaira powers. Interesting. I mean, that's good. That's totally good. I'm like, wow, that's cool. I wonder if she's like part of her race or something. And we've got that, right? We've also got Yaira's past catching up with her, with these three antagonists coming after her. 2 of them having similar powers, one of them being an abomination freak. And that's another thing. Then we've also got the Alpha Corps coming after her. So that's 3 different storylines revolving around this one character, okay? 3 revolving around one. And then we've also got the fact that Yaira is in her, her normal identity, her human identity, Sally. She is like a person that is now being brought onto Projexis, which has been something that's been established in the Rippaverse lore, and it's very interesting. However, that's 4 things now revolving around this one character. And here's the thing. Here's the biggest issue with all of that. There is a 5th edition revolving around Yaira in the fact of her entire backstory of her landing on Earth centuries ago, thousands of years even, and being in Iceland and meeting the love of her life, having a kid and then grandkids, and then she outlives everyone because she's effectively immortal almost, it seems like. And it's just, why do we have all of that in one comic? If this was a full feature-length film, maybe you could do it. But either way, the way it's done, in my opinion, is just not good. The way everything is given to you, the established backstory of Yaira, landing in Iceland doesn't happen until like 2/3, maybe 3/4 of the way through the comic. So whenever that happened, I was like, "What is going on? Why am I being told this? What is happening?" And it's the only reason that I think it's redeemable. The only reason that I think its inclusion is redeemable is the fact that it ties together why this new girl has Yaira powers. Spoilers. She is a descendant of Yaira. And so was her grandmother, which is another reason why I was confused that Yaira was visiting this random old woman, and and all of that. And there is something that's extremely confusing that I'll touch on. She visits this old woman in a nursing home, and then the next page they're in a museum, or like a mansion of some kind. And I'm very confused what happened there. There's nothing that I could see. I looked over that page for like minutes trying to see what transition occurred. It's like she's telling her the legend or something of Yaira, of like someone who defied the gods that are coming after her. She's mentioning that, and then the next page, like they're in a museum, it looks like, and it's just, and I think it's Yaira's mansion. I think that's what it is, because like she goes to this mansion later in the story, and it's just, I'm just super confused how they instant transported, teleported, whatever, to this museum from the nursing home. If they're one in the same place, they don't look like it. And it was very jarring to me. Took me immediately out of it. And that's another thing that I think could have cooked in the oven a little bit longer. I think they could have done a little bit better with that transition. If they had a second, a page in between that showed, that they were in, like, she was flying the grandma through the sky and stuff like that, like, maybe it would have made more sense. But anyways, the Iceland subplot backstory thing makes sense in the story, and that's why I think it's redeemable. That's why I think it's inclusion, while I think totally unnecessary for this first chapter. I think it's interesting, and this is the thing that is so, I guess, double whiplash for me, is that Isom, the series of Isom, is so subtle and so vague about Isom's powers and part of his origin story and everything like that. It's so vague with him, which is totally fine, no issue with that at all. I've talked about why that's actually a good thing. And then this one is like so explicit, like, this is what happened, and then I came here, and it's just, it's too much information. It's information overload, and they threw way too much in this. In my opinion, again, spoilers coming here. In my opinion, I think this comic should have ended with Magus blasting, stabbing the hole through Yaira, through her, like, stomach, and her approaching Altona in the Projexis lab. Cool to see Altona again. She's been in pretty much every comic except for Alpha Core. It should have ended there, in my opinion. I think you could maybe rework a few things to where the ending feels a bit more satisfied. But what an excellent cliffhanger to have this character that's been talked up to be so, impossible to deal with, so unstoppable, suddenly getting shot through the stomach and nearly dying without the help of Altona. And here's the other thing with that as well, while I'm at this scene. Why does she heal so fast? I understand maybe there's a lore reason why she's able to heal herself so fast. I understood that reading it. But it would feel more dramatic and more impactful if her injuries actually made a difference. Because as it is in the comic, she gets stabbed by, like, dark lightning and then just walks it off in a few pages and, like, is not affected by it after this. It's just too much, too quickly, in too short a time for a comic to contain, especially when you consider how bloated and repetitive the dialogue is. It just makes it worse, in my opinion. It just makes the experience take way too long, and it doesn't help with the information overload. Because I'm still constantly, when I'm reading dialogue, I'm still constantly processing information. So I don't get a chance to stop and think about what I just read because I'm constantly reading repetitive dialogue. Um, and it's just, I think the last thing I'll say about this, the last thing I'll say about this, is that the action is good. The action is fine. I think the moments, the fights, and everything. I think it's pretty good. The artwork, I won't say it's bad, but it's definitely my least favorite of the series so far. I don't know what it is specifically about the style, but the faces just kind of seem a little off at times. Sometimes Solari's eyes are like dots, almost how small they are, and then other times like he looks normal. And I understand you can't be consistent as an artist myself. You can't be 100% consistent 100% of the time. But when you hire on, the Rippaverse talked about how they hired on Kanan as a new art director, right? He's someone who's like, basically quality checking the artwork and making critiques here and there and everything like that. When you announce that, then I see Solari's eyes going from small to normal and stuff like that in different scenes. It almost looks like this art was done towards the end is where I'm talking about the tiny eyes in a prison scene. It almost seems like it's drawn by a different person. And maybe that page with Solari was drawn by Deborah, and maybe the rest of it was quality checked by Kanan. And maybe, and this is just theories, maybe Kanan couldn't get to quality checking everything in time for Yaira to release in winter, like they promised. So, again, I think there's just too much going on. I think the final fight, I was very, like, just, you're going to ignite a volcano and kill all of them? Like, I don't know. It just felt over the top. It just felt like, in a story with so much going on, a volcano erupting and then Yaira having to stop the volcano from erupting is just like, it's just too much, man. There's just, the thing is with this character, and I understand that they're trying to emphasize that she's likely the most powerful character in the Rippaverse, at least for the moment. What they're basically establishing is that she can do almost anything. She's almost like a Superman type character, right? She's super strong. She's got flight. She can freeze stuff. She's apparently she can make a volcano erupt and then make her internal temperature so cold that she doesn't melt from the lava. At least that's how I understood it from reading it. Maybe I'm wrong about that last part. But, all of this stuff, she can do all of this stuff. She's like Superman, right? But, again, the problem with Superman, and this is an age-old problem with him ever since he was made, is that if he's so invincible, how do I feel convinced that he can fail? Or in this case, Yaira, how can I be convinced that she can fail when she can just get stabbed through the stomach and then walk it off in the 3 pages? It's just, to me, I think they've fallen for the Superman trap, which is this character is too overpowered. I don't believe that she can ever actually die, or I don't believe she can fail because she's just that good. And the other thing I want to say is this is not a hero character. This is not a character who is a good guy. This is someone who I would say most of the comic is also an antagonist. I would say the protagonist of this comic, or not the protagonist, but the heroes of this comic are the Alpha Core. Once again, this is very focused on Alpha Core, coming off of the Alpha Core comic. It's very focused on them, as well as Yaira, and it's basically they are the heroes. They're the ones who are trying to actually like stop Yaira from just blowing up oil rigs. And because of this, because of the way that she goes about things, because the way she puts, human life in danger all the time, I'm not even rooting for her. I don't even think that she should come out of this as the victor. I don't even want to see her really succeed. I think it would be for the best of the Rippaverse world, the Earth, to for her to return to her world. That, in my opinion, just from what you've shown me in this comic, I think she's kind of a menace. I think J. Jonah Jameson would be having a stroke if he saw her compared to Spider-Man, you know? And it's hard for me to root for that character. Like I said, it's just, she's, there's not a whole lot of redeeming qualities other than the fact that she cares for her family. And it's clear that she doesn't think that she's family at first, and then she realizes that, oh, wait, this is like a descendant of mine. This girl needs to be taken care of. Martinez needs to be taken care of, and I need to show her how to use her powers and explain to her what's gonna happen now that you have these powers. Because it's I think that's a good compelling moment, and I think if maybe they focused on the compassion that she has for her a little bit more than the I'm fighting people of my past and trying to trying to kill them so they stop coming after me, and also my Icelandic you know background. I think if they focused a little bit more on just three aspects of the story instead of like five or six, I think it could have been better. And then the end with like freaking Neptune, I'm like, what the heck is going on, bro? You want to tell me that after everything I just watched, she gets saved by freaking Neptune? Yeah, sure, it's probably like, in the grand scheme, it's probably fine. But I'm just like, I literally just said like, what the hell? Whenever I was reading this, like I said it out loud. I'm just like, what the hell is going on, man? The last thing I'll say is this almost feels, and I'm gonna say the two words that people hate. This almost feels like she's a Mary Sue. I hate to say it, but the story, the first 15, 20 pages are just everyone glazing her. It's like, she's the strongest, except, oh my gosh, she's so strong. Even Solari can't even beat her in a 1v1. Wow, she's so strong. Look at her. She's awesome. And then you got the guy in the business suit like, oh, yeah, she's pretty beautiful. Yeah. And then another thing, I just want to point this out because the Rippaverse has been critical of the Marvel movies and stuff like that. And I don't know if Eric July has made a criticism of Captain Marvel. I haven't watched a video if he's made it of that. But there's a part in Captain Marvel where a guy is kind of, being a little aggressively flirty with her. And she breaks his hand, and people always look at that and say like, oh, is this a hero? Is this what a hero should be doing? Breaking a guy's hand because you don't like the way he's flirting with you? That's not very cool. And no, it's not very cool. I agree. But then Yaira freaking just, a guy in prison flirts with her, and she turns around and punches his jaw off. I'm sorry. You just escalate. You just outdid Captain Marvel. Now, yes, this is a prisoner in a very superpower focused prison. So if he's here, he's probably not a good guy. He's probably a bad guy. He might even deserve to die. But like, I get that Yaira is not a hero. I understand that. But like, she kind of just feels like she's a Mary Sue a little bit, because everything she does, it ends up being like for the better of everyone except for the old lady, who's the grandmother and also a descendant of a grandmother of Martinez and the great granddaughter of Yaira. And it just feels like to me that they spent so much time talking about how crazy strong this character is. And they do back it up, right? You definitely do get to see how strong she is. But it feels like they spent all this time building her up. Not only is she super strong, not only is she, got all these cool powers and stuff, but she's also extremely intelligent. She's also 7 foot tall. She's also, immortal almost. It's like there's so much for her character that it actually, in my opinion, it makes Superman look like a wimp. And it's, to me, those characters that don't have any kind of weaknesses, it just seems to be, to me, just like, I don't really care about this character. It makes me just not really care much about these types. And my final thoughts, if I'm going to wrap this up, this has gone for 30 minutes. My final thoughts, what would I have done differently? I think I would have laser focused on one of the many aspects that were brought up in this comic and expanded that as much as possible while throwing in bits and pieces of a second or third plot line that ties in with everything. I don't think I would have done her entire backstory. And in my opinion, I think it would have been a much better twist later down the line if we found out that Martinez is a descendant of Yaira. I think that would have been a much more well paid off setup if it wasn't set up and paid off in this initial comic. And again, would I say that this comic is like terrible? Is it a waste of money? I don't think it's a waste of money. But had I have known that I didn't like this comic ahead of time, I probably would have bought it on sale. I don't think I would have paid full price for this comic. Not because the art is so terrible, or not because the writing is so terrible. It's not terrible, but it's just not good, in my opinion. It's not good. And let me just say this too, not to throw shade, but the Saskas, what are they most known for? Horror and porn. Neither of which are well known for their writing quality, their dialogue, or their plots. And I just maybe yes, I know they did Black Widow. And everyone liked that. You know, people overall liked that series for Black Widow. But I don't think they were the best pick for this job. It feels like they had a little too much creative reign over this. It feels like there was a bit too much indulgence on this character. It feels like they wanted to write a girl boss without it being specifically called or focused on the fact that she's a woman. But it just feels like they were trying to make a girl boss character without the same girl boss traits that most fans of the Rippaverse hate. And even still, I still feel like she's a girl boss character. I still feel like she's like, and again, there's not necessarily anything wrong with a girl boss character. You just have to, be a good writer. And while the Saskas might be good writers in other things, I don't think they were very good in this. There's lots of things that I think could have been good. I do like a lot of aspects of it, but there's just a lot that weighs it down. Here's the other thing. A little question, a little nitpick. Why have so much swearing if you're just going to censor it? Like, why not just write the dialogue without the pound at $% exclamatory mark? Why not just I don't know, write crap? Maybe I'm just thinking too practical here, but just why? But that's all I really had to say. It's, in my opinion, Yaira is a very, very too busy, too cluttered, and poorly dialogue-ridden story. There are aspects of it that are really good. The fight scenes are pretty decent. The sort of lore that's established is interesting. It's just there's too much of it. Standout character for me is definitely Magus. Rest in peace. I think he had fantastic potential to be a standalone antagonist. After all, it is him at the end who is, the last one standing of the three that are introduced. And he was the most interesting. He was far beyond more interesting than the two Yaira clones. I think you could have introduced Magus in this one, have him be killed off, or at least escape with an inch of his life, and then have the two, Yatoni and Yanessa, in Yaira 2. I think that would have been fine. I think that could have been enough. And if you either just focused on that or just focused on the Alpha Core aspect, Alpha Core versus Yaira, if you wanted to just focus on that, I think it could have been far better. I just think with the way it was, there's just too much going on. And I think you could have cut a few plot lines and made it a bit neater. If the comic needs to be shorter, make it shorter. It does not bother me. It won't bother most people. If you just make a shorter comic that's more focused, I don't think anyone will complain. I don't think anyone will reasonably complain about that. But yeah, I'm disappointed, but I'm not so disappointed that I won't get more Rippaverse comics. I'm definitely looking forward to Gooding. I'm just not really interested in Yaira. When Yaira 2 drops, am I going to buy it? Probably not. And honestly, I might not even buy Blood Ruth because I've had such a sour experience from the writing. I don't trust the Saskas to write what good dialogue for the Blood Ruth comic. So, unless I hear that there's been some serious revisions, there's been some serious focus on, quality control from the Rippaverse, focusing on Yaira number 2 and Blood Ruth. Unless I hear that specifically, I'm probably not going to get those because I'm not very interested. But yeah, what do you guys think? This is probably going to be controversial. And to establish this, just to quench any doubt that anyone may have, I am a Rippaverse fan. I have ISOM 1, ISOM 2, and Alpha Core, and now I have Yaira. I've gotten every single comic, not the magazine. I didn't get the magazine because I wasn't really that interested in it, but I've gotten every single comic that Rippaverse has put out so far, and I've enjoyed 3 out of 4. But if Yaira number 2 is coming out next year, I'm probably going to pass. Blood Ruth, I might also pass. So that's just me at the end of the day. So with that being said, thanks so much for watching. If you want to watch more, make sure you subscribe, hit the bell to get notified when I upload my next video. Little Miss Steel is still coming. I'm actually talking with Rippa right now. Rippaverse's comic supporting business that's like attached to them, but not directly connected to the Rippaverse lore-wise. It's just they're a service for other comic people. I'm talking with them. I'm trying to see if I can get something worked out with them so I can put out Little Miss Steel much more efficiently with their help than just doing it all by myself. If I have to do it all by myself, I might just do webcomic. I might just go back to it. As much as that's not good for sales, I might just do it. But with that being said, stay tuned for more updates about that. And if I hear anything, you will know it. Follow me on all my social medias. I do a lot of art posting on DeviantArt. And I'm also pretty active in Discord. So, till next time, peace out.